Good morning, everyone. We are just at the top of the hour of our scheduled time, 9:45. I think this is one of the panels which is starting before. So, thank you, my all panelists, for being here. We have Neha, who is from Ikigai Law. She's a partner there. We have Venkatesh, who is from Data Security Council of India. Data Security Council of India is an initiative of NASSCOM, specifically focusing on security. And then we have Karthik, who has recently become an independent consultant. So, three different people from three different walks of life working on the same topic, which is cybersecurity. And that session is titled as India's Cybersecurity Requirements. So, we really don't know that what it exactly means. Okay, so I'll just go to my panelists to see and get their opinion that what does they actually mean when they see this topic, India's cybersecurity requirements. So we'll start with Neha. So you can take around 4 to 5 minutes to just paint the picture what you see
Okay.
as the
Sure.
cybersecurity requirements.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks so much, Bilal, for having us here and for the introduction. I'm a lawyer by training, so I'll limit my and by profession, so I'll limit my perspectives to the legal perspectives as well. So, what I'd say is perhaps two broad points, right? One is there's the legal side of things, and then there's the evolving sort of policy nature of how cybersecurity conversations in the country are shaping up. In law, uh, the biggest sort of takeaway for us and that we see playing out in practice is that it's a deeply fragmented framework. You've got larger obligations that come through our parent legislation, which is the Information Technology Act, that do have, and you've got the CERTIN, which is the nodal agency that's supposed to look at incident response, monitoring, tracking, education, awareness building, a whole bunch of different things that they're required to do. And that responsibility technically vests with the CERT-in. Over the years, we've seen different kinds of directives, etc., come through. Most recently in 2022, where now you've got a 6-hour reporting timeline. If there is an incident of a material nature, right, like a significant incident that has taken place, you're required to inform your cybersecurity authority within 6 hours. The challenge here is that you don't really know what constitutes material. You don't really know what the gravity is. So it's a decision that companies and organizations end up making. It's left to their discretion. Some of the clients that we work with are happy about this because it gives them flexibility, and I am able to decide whether or not this is serious or not serious. Others, on the other hand, would prefer a lot more certainty, predictability in the law. You also have in parallel other additional requirements that exist for sectors which are identified as critical information infrastructure, so things like finance, telecom, so on and so forth. You've got like certain additional requirements. But this is just your sort of, IT Act framework that comes under that. The challenge is that additional cybersecurity requirements, right? Whether that's on the technical side, whether it's on the reporting side, whether it's penalties, whether it's the form of how do you notify. All of this for us comes through a patchwork of sort of rules, regulation, guidelines that sector-specific regulators in the country come up with. So you've got your Reserve Bank of India, which is our financial regulator, that talks about how things work in the financial ecosystem, what should the guidelines be. And all of this is in addition to whatever you're required to do under the Information Technology Act. So very often businesses that we're advising are not necessarily very happy about it. One, because it's an additional compliance burden. I should be able to perhaps just talk to one person who then, or like a common window or a common platform where all regulators are able to, maybe have access or whatever. And sometimes there isn't necessarily consistency among these things. The reporting timelines will vary. The additional requirements will vary. The form of reporting will vary. The financial regulator will say something, the telecom regulator will say something else. I think recently there was one of these rules that the TRI and DOT are coming out with under the new Telecom Act. There was some 2-hour reporting timeline or something like that, right? So there is fragmentation at every level, starting from the legislation, then going down to how the regulators are enforcing it also, which then we see in practice causing all kinds of problems. Because businesses very often, and it's also counterproductive, instead of actively wanting to report, businesses then tend to hold back because you're unsure, you're uncertain, and you don't quite really know how all of this is going to play out. I'll maybe pause with that.
Fantastic. I think you left us at a very good note that it is very confusing for businesses. So, Venkatesh, as part of DSCI, you have the businesses as your members. Okay, so you can take it from there and explain what is the cybersecurity requirements. What do you see the input from the businesses?
Thanks, Anupam. So before I give my views, my background, I spent about 19 years with police, fortunately or unfortunately, as part of the capacity building initiative of
You still
DSCI.
look like a police.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So cybersecurity, from a law enforcement point of view, I see it completely different from whatever compliance, whatever the rules and regulations. Just now Neha had mentioned about the IT Act requirements. We have seen the days when police used to go for a raid, password for the week was written on the whiteboard. Those days, now it has matured a lot. So let me begin with a case study. So one of the global financial institution had outsourced its prepaid card processing to a company in India. Hackers unauthorizedly gained access, and then they were able to siphon off about 25 crore Indian rupees. So as usual, the company, the victim, registered a criminal case with the cybercrime police station under section 66 read with 43. Hacking case was given, and police registered the case. And during the course of investigation, when they wanted to do the forensic analysis of the server which was affected, um, they could recover nothing. And on inquiry, they got to know that the victim company, the moment they got to know that their servers were under attack, they did a clean installation of the servers. So that's where the cybersecurity requirements. It's not only about securing. You need to be aware what if, in case if there is any cybersecurity breach incident, how do I handle it? That's what is very much required. Cybersecurity is not a compliance issue. Okay, compliance issue alone. Uh, you need to have that mindset. You need to have that mindset. You need to have that investigator's mindset. That is first thing. So second thing, when it comes to requirements from a business point of view, like Ms. Neha has already mentioned, IT Act, there are some specific provisions. DPDP Act is yet to come in force. IT Act Section 43A and 72A talk significantly about the privacy protection, which indirectly tells us to have cybersecurity. Because Information Technology Act talks about two very important terms. One is the safe security practices and due diligence. So as a body corporate, if I'm processing sensitive personal information, I need to exercise safe security practices and also show due diligence. That is one thing. And second thing, from a regulatory point of view, if your institution is processing some critical information, then the NCIIPC, the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, so they have their own guidelines which talks about the criticality under Section 70 of IT Act, where the institutions are notified as a protected system. So then the level of security is completely different. And and in addition to this, there are some other guidelines, like the CERTIN regularly gives the guidelines. People used to ask me in 2016 or 17, do we have a breach notification law? The general answer was no. But in fact, 2014 itself, CERTIN had issued some guidelines which talked about certain attacks, maybe 3 or 4 attacks, like the Salami attack was also mentioned. Salami attack, denial of service attack, all these attacks were mentioned in the annexure. So you have to mandatorily report. That was there. Whereas, what if I failed to report? That was not mentioned. So now with the new guidelines that was issued by the CERTIN, so it has created a lot of onus on the businesses, like the time zone. You need to have that synchronization of the time zone. You can't have your own time zone. That is one thing. And the second thing is the reporting within 6 hours. People do debate about whether 6 hours is too much or it's too small window to report all those things, because it's a panic hour in the end of the day. If me putting myself in the shoes of a business corporate, if I have learned that my company is under threat, I may not have that sound state of mind to first report and then look at the problem. I would rather like in India. People ask why the businesses don't report to police. There are two things. One is they become further victimized. The moment
That is correct.
the moment you register a case, it becomes the affair becomes a public property. Thanks to Lalita Kumari judgment, where within 24 hours the FIR has to be uploaded on the state government website. So the media house eyes are scanning for such sensitive issues, and they become further victimized. That is one thing. And second thing is people are worried about the lengthy court process. So whenever I learned that I have become victim of cyber attack, so for me, I'm more worried about to deal with it internally before even approaching to any third party or the external regulator also, like the certain. That is one thing. And thirdly, it is also the certain guidelines also mandate each company to have a spoke, the single point of contact with whom the certain can interact. So all these things, I think, when it comes to cybersecurity requirements from a business point of view, one is the legal requirement is there. Second is the technical readiness has to be there, which includes the forensic readiness also. And most importantly, you need to have that incident response preparedness. What do I do in case if I become victim of a cybersecurity breach incident? So I think it is evolving, and companies are also very much prepared. The adoption of the latest artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies are there. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Venkatesh. Just because you told that you had the police background, I'll share an experience. 3 weeks from now, before I went to a cybercrime police station, while the breach notification requirement is 6 hours, just to file an FIR took me more than 8 hours. Okay. So, and it is very difficult to explain a sub-inspector in the police station that what has actually we lost, what is the data we lost. So, while you are asking to be prepared on the business side, how much prepared is the law enforcement itself to handle such cases?
See, it all started with the Prajwala case. The Ministry of Home Affairs, although they used to have that opinion that crime and law and order is a state subject, whenever the central government is questioned about crime, like the cybersecurity related breach, which has to be reported. So that was a ready-made answer, but with the Supreme Court had mandated the Ministry of Home Affairs to have the online reporting. To begin with, it was offenses against women and children in the beginning, and now they have extended it to other crimes also. So the National Cybercrime Reporting Portal, which functions under the I4C. I4C is the Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center, which is part of the MHA. So they have a NCRP, that is cybercrime.gov.in. Suppose you become victim of cybercrime, be it a company or an individual, you can file an online complaint. That online complaint definitely doesn't give the status of FIR, but it gets registered, and in turn from MHA it will come to the nodal officer of the state, and from the nodal officer of the state it will reach to your jurisdictional police station, and instead of you approaching, the jurisdictional police station will be behind you. Please come, we have to close this case.
No, they don't say it so in a inviting way.
Yeah.
Okay, so that I
That's
can.
always there. That's always there. It takes some more time for, but states have investing. State governments is investing like anything, and the central government also with this CCPWC project, cybercrime prevention against women and children, they have ensured that there is a baseline standard requirements across the country, states and union territories. So they have invested. Central government has invested. So it is ongoing, and it will take some more time.
Thank you so much, Venkatesh, for this initial thoughts. So, Karthik, you have worked in RBI. So, Can you take us through from the sectoral regulator perspective, the cybersecurity requirements?
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Anupam, and good morning to everyone. But before going to my RBI experience, since the topic is India's cybersecurity requirements, I was reminded of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So Maslow says that only when your basic needs of roti, kapda, makan, your basic needs are met, then you think of security and safety, right? So, taking this analogy to the tech domain, we can talk of cybersecurity only when we have technology expertise. Unless Unless we build expertise in technology, cybersecurity will always take a backseat, right? So let's keep this in mind when we talk of India's cybersecurity requirements. Now coming to Rebit. So Rebit, if you don't know, is IT captive of Reserve Bank of India. It was established in 2016, primarily for the purpose of taking care of RBI's cybersecurity requirements, because RBI realized that they need to adopt a different model for building technology and cybersecurity expertise within the institution. And now, having spent about 3 years at Rebit, I strongly feel that the Rebit kind of model is the only sustainable model to build technology expertise in public sector. The reason I'm saying this is, in public sector, the way today we build, we recruit people, and the incentives that we have for skilling, we don't value technology skills, at the initial level of recruitment, because somebody does not get a higher weightage just because they have technology expertise. They're treated the equal. And we all know that once you get into the system, the incentives for upskilling and reskilling is pretty much gone in public sector, right? This is, this is challenging our ability to build technology expertise, because technology, as we know, is a rapidly evolving domain, right? The kind of technology we had 5 years back, 10 years back is very different from the kind of technology we have today. And we need to have a system where people, in the public sector are able to upskill and reskill, which our, the model we have today is just not able to cope up with it. So in that perspective, if you see, what RBI did is they instituted this, captive subsidiary. Everybody in Rebit is recruited on a contract basis. So you have the incentive to be on your toes all the time. And that gives the institution the ability to tap into the market, the expertise that's available in the market, and build those expertise in-house, right? So and if you talk to the regulated entities today, the banks and the NBFCs that RBI provides oversight over, they vouch for the fact that the inspections and the audit that RBI conducts, the quality of it has increased significantly, with the advent of Rebit. Now, what this means, see, it's one thing to formulate regulations, but it's also important to enforce the regulations, right? Because weak enforcement always incentivizes those who are non-compliant, and puts those who are compliant, at a disadvantage. Same thing with law, right? If you don't have strong law enforcement, people who break the law have an incentive, because they have an advantage, whereas people who follow the law, are at a disadvantage. We see this in our day-to-day lives, right? So if you go to a railway level crossing and we are waiting, if somebody comes from the opposite lane, he's at an advantage, right? Because he can go ahead of the rest of the traffic. But then he's breaking the law, and people who are compliant to the law are at a disadvantage. Same thing happens with regulations. Unless you have the ability to enforce regulations strictly, having regulations is of no use. So the advantage of the model like Revit is that it provides the technology expertise to public bodies, and it provides them the ability to enforce regulations, in the right manner.
Okay, thank you. So what you are essentially saying is that self-regulation is something which has to be there by the bodies.
No, so self-regulation is a different ballgame. So recently RBI has allowed the fintech industry to come up with a self-regulatory body, right? Which is fantastic. What I'm saying is, uh, when we talk of India's cybersecurity requirements, we need to appreciate that building technology expertise in public sector is important, and it is challenging with the current model that we have. And the Revit kind of model is something we need to explore further. The Revit kind of model should be scaled up for further many other public bodies.
So essentially, Revit allows you to have more specific implementation of the regulations, which is there.
Enforcement of the regulation.
Enforcement of the regulation.
But at a basic level, that kind of model allows you to build expertise, be agile, which otherwise is difficult in public sector.
Okay, thank you. So I'll move to you, Neha, again. So you have been in this field for more than a decade now. Any experience which you would like to share, which challenged your perspective of cybersecurity?
Sure. Again, just some practical examples, I think, of the kind that we, kind of questions perhaps that we get from clients, or some of the pitfalls that we see. I think one of the things, we've seen this on more than one occasion, right? And we've been talking about enforcement, we've been talking about regulation and what to do. You also brought up the point of organizational processes and safeguards. I think very often the single point of failure we've very often seen is you're not accounting for human error, and you're not necessarily doing enough as an organization to maybe upskill your employees, to sensitize your employees, to just anticipate simple things that you and I would perhaps take for granted, right? That of course nobody is going to click on a phishing related email. Of course we're going to have like strong two-factor authentication, etc., in place. Very often the kind of incidents that we get questions from clients, and then when you investigate, right, how was all of this, what happened, this is where very often we find gaps. You've not necessarily done enough to upskill employees, you've not necessarily done enough to train employees. Even more complicated in perhaps larger organizations, because it's really hard. Different employees at a different level are going to be interacting with the world at large in different ways. We had one question which triggered off a whole set of responses because somebody misplaced their backpack, which had their office laptop and a whole bunch of different things in it. They thought they had misplaced it. Ultimately, it was not where they thought it would be. They found it somewhere at home. So, I mean, just anticipating, whenever you're talking about incident response plans, or when you're talking about what is it that you're going to set in motion, should this happen, right? And we suggest companies do mock drills and fire drills all the time. What are you going to do if an incident like this takes place? I think not to forget that it could be very simple human error that leads to, some kind of an incident, and what are you going to do in those kind of situations? Building that in, I think, as a part and parcel of whatever plans you're thinking about. It's something that we encounter day in and day out. That's one. And the second is one of the points that I was making earlier, right? To the point even that Karthik was making, regulation is important, regulation is key. But I also think that there is something to be said for, in my view, I think there's a little bit of a trust deficit between businesses and the regulatory authorities. So what can we do to sort of help bridge that trust deficit? We've seen on more than one occasion where companies should comply, but they don't want to comply. So the questions will be, how do I, does this, which then you start looking for creative ways in the law, right? Does this meet the materiality standard or not? Is this an obligation is this actually an obligation for me? Where it's become this sort of checkbox exercise, where that's not the intent of the law at all. The intent of the law and the intent of having certain there is that you're able to go and report. But businesses are also expecting something from the regulator in return, which is that if you're collecting all of this data, part of your function is also to help educate us.
Yes.
What are you doing with that information, right? If 50 companies have come and reported this information to you, are you doing any awareness building? Are you doing capacity building? Are you coming and telling businesses, listen, this is what we're observing. 50 different people have come and told us. So I do think there is a little bit of that trust deficit. And I also think that there is worry that if I come and report to you in good faith, I think that process or the act of reporting itself will be the punishment. And if I come and tell the cybersecurity regulator is going to go and talk to the financial regulator, who then is in turn going and talking to the telecom regulator. And then before I know it, before I've even had my chance to wrap my head around this and decide what kind of corrective action I'm going to take, it's on the front page of like the next morning's newspaper, right? Which for a B2C business is, I mean, it's killer. You're going to have significant drop off of users of your platform. Nobody's going to trust you. B2B businesses, why will somebody come and do business with you if you're not able to take care of, your cybersecurity? So there are sort of very real life business impacts that our clients also deal with. I'm not saying that they shouldn't go and comply with the law. So, I mean, for us, it's a very easy sort of answer, right? Like, I can't tell you to break the law. But this is some of the stuff, these are some of the practical tensions that we've seen they encounter.
So it is exactly the same practical tension which I see in individuals when they are not going and reporting it to the police, because the amount of time they will be investing vis-a-vis the 10,000 rupees which has been taken out from their account, possibly they don't see it practical enough to go and spend that time. So while you are on this subject, could you just take us a little more into depth? While you're saying it is fragmented, I understand. Is the national cybersecurity policy not good enough, which brings this fragmentation together?
So, I mean, recently you've seen the changes in the new allocation of business rules. So we've seen that you're going to have the NCSL. I always get this abbreviation wrong, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. Having being the nodal agency, yes. But again, the national cybersecurity policy it's a policy document, right? It's a vision document that tells you what are the various things that you aspire to do. Title of this session even, right? What are your cybersecurity needs, national security needs, and where does cybersecurity fit into all of this, and what should we aspire to do? It's a very big picture document, and it's a policy document. The regulation comes through IT Act, it comes through RBI guidelines, it comes through SEBI, it comes through something else that the DOT has to say, it comes through separate guidelines on critical information infrastructure. And no matter whatever the form, right, whether it's a cybersecurity policy, whether it's a new avatar that they're talking about now, strategy, whether they're talking about it being a framework, it's always going to be that. It's going to be aspirational, it'll give you big picture goals. It can tell you, right, at most it'll say things like regulators should talk to each other, you should have a unified framework. That's great. But then what? Where do you go from there? How do you operationalize things like this? I, as a business, somebody running a business can't do much with a policy document, right? What am I supposed to do with it?
That's so fair. Yeah. Okay. So Venkatesh, could you just elaborate it from here and share some experience which has challenged your idea of cybersecurity itself?
So cybersecurity, two, three instances I would like to share here. One is there is a notorious ransomware gang. So they targeted a company. I don't want to name the victim as well as the attacker.
You give us some data point, we will identify.
Yeah, definitely you will be able to identify. Anyways, this is on the public domain. So this ransomware gang attacked a company, and all the computers were infected with ransomware. And as usual, they sent a ransom note. The victim company did not respond. Okay, in spite of sending the ransom note with the expiry timer sent, they did not bother to respond. So this ransomware gang, what they did, they reported to security exchanges. Like we have a breach notification, within 6 hours you need to report. So the attacker themselves, they reported to the security exchanges something similar to certain that this company which is under attack, they have not reported. Wow. Okay, that's a innovation. That is one thing. The second thing is when we talk about cybersecurity, there are guys who do offensive activities. There are guys who do defending activities. So one very interesting shift I'm seeing is with the guys having these offensive skill sets. So for us, the general depiction of an hacker is a uncombed hair with a beard, with a lot of alcohol, caffeine, tobacco. These are the general essential features of an hacker. Thanks to movies like Wednesday, where they depict that zeros and ones or the okay. That was a general depiction of an hacker. But the last 10 years, there is a shift. Hackers have become more patient. Okay, the only reason the criminals get caught is they are always in a hurry. Okay, when they don't have that peace of mind, they tend to satisfy the Locard's principle of okay. So what we have noticed is there are guys in India who run a course called Vipassana meditation course for hackers. Okay. Yeah. So they have identified that hackers always, they are in a hurry. They don't have that state of mind that's not there. The soundness is not there. So that's where they have identified, and I got access to those material also. The first chapter, it begins with an exercise, simple exercise. Observe your breathing, from which nostril you are breathing. So generally we think that we use both the nostrils at a time. So there he says you can only breathe either from right or left. You should observe, and then he will give you all the introduction to scriptures, whatever scriptures are there that he gives, and gives a lot of wrong interpretation of our Bhagavad Gita, Karmanye Vadikarasya, all those things, and he will ensure that this guy will not change the line to ethical way. So at the end of every chapter, there is one capture the flag. So to bring back to the malicious thinking that is happening. So hackers, their mindset has changed. Now it is very difficult to differentiate between a white hat versus black hat. Very, very difficult. That is one thing. And with respect to security also, still that human weakness is still there. There was a case where the police registered the case, and in the complaint itself, the accused name, everything was there. As if police, they just need to act. Okay. They just need to act. Complete information was provided by the company itself. So the officer got curious. He asked, see, this is a complex case. When I look at the FIR, it looks very complex. I'm surprised. How did you enter the accused person's name? And then the complainant company says, look, sir, we are running this company. We had suspicion about this employee. This employee's lifestyle changed all of a sudden. So we asked our security guy to install a keylogger on his personal laptop so that the keylogger records the conversation, whatever he is doing. And one fine day, we confiscated his personal laptop, and we got to know that he was chatting with his accomplice in UK. So that's where we identified. So they have forgotten the requirements with respect to the privacy, the consent, the notification, all those things. And what you need to appreciate here is it was a personal laptop. So then the police asked, do you have any BYOD, bring your own device guidelines? He said, no, sir. How did you do it? Sir, we just created a scenario that you have to immediately go to the other branch, and in his absence, we just installed. Our guy had a pen drive. The pen drive had this keylogger. We captured it. So there is lack of understanding of law, what is right, what is wrong, when it comes to managing cybersecurity. Although the intention might be good, but there is a way. You cannot invade somebody's privacy. The next very important thing, what has changed my perception about security is thanks to Edward Snowden. Although a decade is over, 2013, the massive revelations, the mass surveillance activities carried out by the agency were there. So it has literally changed the definition of privacy. For us, prior to 2013, privacy, can I have some privacy means? It's a bodily privacy. I'm asking Karthik to move. That was the privacy. Then we started thinking about the online privacy, data privacy, And thanks to dozens of blogs, blogs and books like Kevin Mitnick had written a book, The Art of Invisibility, How to Stay Invisible Online. So this has really challenged the security community because last month I was in DEF CON, Vegas. So there they released something called as a pocket-sized pocket-sized server, which is exclusively for whistleblowers. So the features of that server is it's a pocket size. You can keep it in your pocket. It's a server which is powered by Raspberry Pi, which is Tor enabled. It's a one-way communication. You can only send the message. You cannot receive anything. So that's a kind of situation we are in. So the security community, be it from an enforcement point of view or the corporate cybersecurity team. So whatever crime or whatever the incident that we used to see 10 years before is not there. Those are all those are all considered as very basic. So now the sophistication has improved, and the too much of information is available in public domain.
So,
What if?
So can we say that it has become taken the shape of an organized crime?
Yeah, organized crime and the new criminal law, the BNS, the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, also talks about organized crime, which includes cyber crime.
Okay.
So they have clearly mentioned about cyber crimes, part of the organized crime. So that is one very alarming development. It has become mandated thanks to alternative currencies, where the enforcement agencies fail to decipher the cryptocurrency address. So those things are while a lot of information are available on public domain, somewhere the too much of information has created a problem. Say like what if the IP address is traced outside India? Okay, so your 91 CRPC or the new BNSS, the applicability has some limitation. So information is available in public domain. It says that MLAT and letters rogatory will have to be followed. So criminal also get access to that information. So next time when he commits a crime, he will look at the procedure to obtain information from outside India, and there he finds the complete guidelines released by the Ministry of Home Affairs. So there it is clearly mentioned the list of countries with whom India has the diplomatic relation. So I will select a country which is not there in that list.
Okay.
So things have complicated.
Over to you, Karthik. So any incident you would like to share which challenged your concept of cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I mentioned about the need to build technology expertise, right? Now let me give an example which undermines that the theory. Some months back, I was in a review of the cyber crime cases that was conducted at the state level. Okay. So this officer was conducting a review of all the cyber crime cases across different districts, and the nodal officers from each district were telling about what is the update on the different cases in their jurisdiction. What I found interesting was whenever there is a case where the perpetrator and the victim are in the same locality, the ability of the police to catch hold of the perpetrator and progress on the case was much higher. Whenever the perpetrator and the victim are in different jurisdictions, the police were lost, right? To give an example, let's say somebody filmed someone doing in a compromising position or something, right? The perpetrator and the victim would be in close proximity, right? So police were able to carry out their investigations and move further on those cases. Whereas the Jamtara kind of frauds, right, where I get a call, someone says I'm from TRAI or nowadays FedEx or RBI, whatever, and then you defraud the victim of the money. Police are struggling to investigate these cases. Now, my take on this is that the primary challenge that our law enforcement facing is the constitutional framework that we have inherited, right? When our laws were, IPCs and CRPCs were framed back in 1870s, 1880s, let alone cyber, even, telephone and telegraphy were its very nascency, right? Uh, the, the underlying victim when we framed these laws was that for a crime to happen, the perpetrator and the victim have to be in proximity, right? Which was probably true those days. Today, we know that in the last 10 years, with the, and especially in the last 5 years, with the exponential increase in cyber crimes, basically what the criminals are doing is they are taking this jurisdictional arbitrage, right? They know that, it's difficult for, as long as the victim is in a different state, a different jurisdiction, it's difficult for the police in that jurisdiction to, get behind me. So basically, they have, leveraged that arbitrage.
Okay.
So I think we need to reimagine our legal framework. Of course, there is all this concern that will come that, if we have a central federal agency, would they trample upon the powers of the state? Yeah, we need to strike the balance. But I think it's important that, we see this as an operational challenge, right? You mentioned about a victim of a 10,000 rupees crime, right? Now, just imagine, let's say the victim goes to the local police and lodges a complaint, right? Now, the police will probably do the initial analysis, CDR, IPDR, where the SIM is, where the bank account, KYC address is, etc. Let us say the police find that the call originated from, say, Bharatpur. The SIM was procured from some place in Odisha. The bank account KYC is from some place in Bengal. Now, what should the police person do next? This is a 10,000 rupees fraud. For him to send somebody to Bharatpur and then send somebody to Odisha and then somebody to Bengal is going to cost him probably 2 lakh rupees, right? And then he needs to get the cooperation of the police in those jurisdictions. What is the incentive for them to cooperate? It's not their case. It's not their KPI. It's the KPI of this, police here in where I am the victim, right? It's that police KPI, right? So what is the incentive for the police in the other jurisdictions to cooperate? So if you see, this is, it's an operational mess that we are today living in. And the criminals are taking advantage of this entanglement that the police are facing.
So one of my favorite pastime now is to talk with this guy who calls themselves Try and all. Okay. So it is very entertaining when you talk with them. So last month I had shipped 16 passports to Malaysia. Before that I had MDMA of around 1 kg which I have given to some person in China. So it's very interesting. If you are bored, you can talk with them. Okay. The other thing is, when I challenged one of them, they said, "Tum kitna kamata hai?" मैं 90 लाख रुपया कमाता हूँ साल का, ठीक है? So I am sure you are not earning that much. So they have become audacious now. So what you are saying is they have taken it to the next level and they have become very audacious now. And you are giving us an argument of that there is no ROI for investigating the case itself. Okay. So on the ground, what I see as a challenge, Neha, again coming back to you, is that still that law of a sub-inspector cannot become the investigating officer for a cybercrime case. I think it is still there. It is at least at the level of an inspector or someone who has to who can investigate the case. Is that going to be solved recently, or?
I have no way of answering. I have no way of answering that question.
So
I don't know if you do, but I have no way of answering.
You see, the idea of restricting the rank for investigating cyber crimes, so it all started with the IT Act 2000. IT Act was never meant to be a cybercrime law related thing. It was electronic contracts and providing the legal recognition for e-commerce. So there they discussed about some of the offenses. Only 3 offenses were there: 65, tampering with the computer source document; 66 was hacking; the third one, 67, was transmission of obscene information in electronic form. Okay, so at that point in time, the minimum rank for investigating an offense under the IT Act under Section 78 was DSP and above. So with the amendments to the IT Act in the year 2009, although it is called IT Act 2008, It came into force from 2009. So the Section 78 and Section 80, there were some significant amendments were made where the power to investigate, the DSP was investigating officer. So it was brought down to police inspector. So now the very idea of bringing it down to police inspector was those days, even today, it's not true that every police station will have a DSP rank officer. A DSP takes care of 7 to 10 police stations. So now in India, every police station has a police inspector. So that was the main idea behind bringing it down to police inspector. And now there are some debate and discussions are also happening, and there is some consultation also happening where they plan to bring it down to police sub-inspector. Police sub-inspector would be the minimum rank for investigation. So maybe the Digital India Act, which would go to replace the Information Technology Act, would cover that, because there were some media reports that Justice T.K. Vishwanathan committee, which was working on the amendments to the IT Act 2000, further amendments. So there they are clearly mentioned that the power to investigate will be brought down to police sub-inspector.
That will be very helpful. So in Bengal, I can tell you, we have 454 police stations, out of which 350 are managed by sub-inspectors.
Yeah.
The SHO is a sub-inspector, and so they don't register the case under IT Act itself. So it gets reported under CRPC or something. So we'll stop here our conversation. We'll open the floor for audience questions. 1, 2.
I'll take the one at the back. I'll come to you. Anyone this side? Any hands? Do you want to take the questions together?
Yeah, we can do that.
Hi, I am Aditya. I have a question related to the national cybersecurity policy. So, strategic policy do play an important role, and we saw this, especially when it comes to law enforcement. We saw this with the national blockchain strategy. So, under the blockchain strategy, there was suggestion of having a blockchain-based FIR management system, and it was because of that strategy that we have districts in states like Haryana and UP which are using blockchain to register FIR. So, in light of this, India presently has a national cybersecurity policy of the year 2013. And when the ministers were asked a question based on it in the last parliament session, he was clueless. So do you believe, in light of this, that cybersecurity is something which the government is not prioritizing? And if a new cybersecurity is to come today, what all are the things that should be included in it?
Hi. So my question is with respect to cyber crimes. So the final responsibility is with state police, and then there are some states that are light years ahead, such as Telangana. It has a center of excellence on cyber safety, and then there are some other states which are not. So even when there are some states that have the capabilities, then there is non-compliance from the companies. So recently there was Haryana police that went to High Court because WhatsApp was not assisting them with financial crimes. So in that case, even when there is capabilities with state police, there is non-compliance by the companies. In that scenario, with respect to smart policing, where are we headed when it comes to financial crimes specifically?
Shiva has a question. तुम्हारा भी है. Look, let me give it to Shiva because he's frantically.
No. Hey, my name is Shivakumar Dakshinamurthy. I think great session, sharing in the fun note also, hackers have the, meditation session and the reporting to the, authorities. Jokes are apart, my question is very specifically like why cyber crimes are really increasing heavily in India also, right? The last year report talks about close to 70 crore plus. And almost around 5,000 cases registered. So how easy for us to track and punish the cyber criminal in practical sense? I know that it's difficulty. We wanted to hear from this expert panel on this now, specifically in Indian context.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, sir. I'm Tarun Kaushik. I'm a cybersecurity undergrad at National Forensic Sciences University. So my question is, like, considering the lack of uniformity in digital forensic practices across India, every state forensic science laboratory has different protocols called panchanamas to separate. So why doesn't the government standardize a single protocol? Because it's really difficult, and because of these things, like other panchanamas, it becomes difficult, to get analyzed and come to an output. So this is why cases in India are like heavy to solve, and they digital forensic cases don't even come to conclusion.
Good morning, panelists. My name is Deepika, and I'm Venkatesh sir's colleague from DSCI. So, my question, I actually got reminded of this question when you were talking about Jamtara, Mr. Karthik. So, in that sense, even in DSCI, we do a lot of research on payments-related fraud and how can we have a coordinated effort in terms of law enforcement. But in terms of Jamtara and crimes like that specifically, there's an element of social engineering frauds. And in some instances, it's actually valid. There's really an element of social engineering frauds that's established there. But in most of the times, the other stakeholders of the industry, they might not be willing to take any sort of liability because they can blame it on the customer's negligence easily. So in that instance, and this is also something that we struggled with in our research, how can we establish that it's a social engineering fraud and it's not merely customer negligence? So I wanted to know your perspectives on that. Thank you.
So this is your question to Venkatesh.
To her boss.
Well, that was why I was wondering,
boss,
when
she
is your
asked this
appraisal next due?
Okay, I'll pick up the first one,
one, yeah.
parts of the one on standardization across states, etc. I don't disagree that a policy is important. It gives strategic direction, so on and so forth. But I do disagree that nothing has been done since then. Yes, it's been in the work. It's to a large extent, maybe it's high time that we had a revised version of this policy. But it's also that we've been doing, every year, there has been conversations on a new national cybersecurity strategy coming in. And for various reasons, including bureaucratic reshuffles at the highest level, including changes in the guard at the NSCS, at various affiliated agencies, large parts of these drafts have not necessarily been made public. It's not that it's not there. It's that maybe you and I don't know about it, which opens up a whole other can of worms for sure. But it's not like those updates and revamping that framework and all of that is not something that folks that are working on it are not doing. I also think that this recent cabinet reshuffle is perhaps, one of those steps that takes you in that direction where hopefully eventually you will see this strategy come to light. And again, this is not necessarily unique to cybersecurity. It's that very often when there are bureaucratic reshuffles or when decision makers at the top change, very often their approach changes, right? Like when X is handling a specific file, they may have a specific vision or approach and the kind of way that they want to do this. Then when your cybersecurity coordinator changes, there might be a different perspective that they have, and then you're sort of going back to ground zero. We've seen this on more than one occasion.
More than one.
We've seen this in the context of the data rules. We've seen this in the context of the DIA, which was supposed to come. Now it's no longer going to come. We've seen this in the context of AI governance, where initially, it might have been a part of the DIA. Now it's, then maybe there was going to be another law. Now there may not be a law at all, right? So this kind of flip-flop or changes are not necessarily uncommon. But that said, I don't disagree with you in terms of the fact that that policy document is an important role to play. And I would love to see an updated sort of version of the draft. And the second part, I do think that just broadly, it does need a lot of updating. There are, so many of the themes that we've touched upon here, right? Capacity building, how do you address some of these things in practice? Do you look at a single window? Do you have differentiated responsibility for different kind of sectors? Is there a need to sort of relook at that that whole framework? Do you have one agency that oversees everything and plays this kind of coordinated role? Can you look at the India AI mission for guidance, which is more about investing money, building capacity, identifying priority sector areas, and then doing whatever needs to be done to sort of bring that up? Several people have suggested adopting a similar approach for cybersecurity as well. You treat it with that kind of love and care, and you put in that kind of money. And that is really what will bring about the change, not necessarily having rules and regulations and enforcement. That's one part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will pick up Tarun Kaushik's question. It was about standardizing the digital forensic procedures. So I would like to draw your attention to ongoing matter in the Apex Court, Ram Ramaswamy and others versus Union of India, which talks about the standardization because they talked of they are worried about the academic freedom. So whenever there is a case, police barge in the university and they try to confiscate the laptops. So they are worried about their institutions like IMB or any other institution. So the professors would always be worried about their academic research that is stored in their laptop or the handheld devices. So when they ask the police, what is the assurance that my data doesn't get leaked? So they did not receive any satisfactory answer. That's where they approached the Honorable Supreme Court with a criminal writ petition, requesting the Supreme Court to instruct the Ministry of Home Affairs to come up with the rules and regulation for standardized one nation and there would be one standard operating procedure. Parallelly, there is another NGO from the Tamil Nadu Federation of Media Professionals. They also filed a complaint stating that journalistic freedom, police, the moment they catch the person, even if it's for traffic violation, the first thing they do is snatch the mobile phone from them. So Supreme Court merged both the criminal petition and they've started hearing it together. So in the application itself, the petitioners had clearly mentioned 7-8 points as far as possible, judicial magistrate permission will have to be obtained before going for search and seizure, number one. Number two, cases where the judicial magistrate permission is not obtained, the reasons to be recorded in writing and it has to be handed over to the device owner. That's the second thing. And the third very important item is, if the device is encrypted with a password, the user should not be compelled to reveal it. That was their request. And the fourth item is the original will have to be left with the device owner and the only copy will have to be carried by the police. Fifth very important item is the forensic analysis of the laptop will have to be conducted in the presence of the device owner plus an independent computer forensic professional. So these were the basic requirements. And now let me quickly, in the interest of time, we have only 3 minutes and Karthik has to speak. So I will just tell you, MHA has started creating it. There is a consultation workshop, a committee is formed, and MHA has submitted before the Honorable Supreme Court, and they've asked for 6 weeks time for further review, further refining it. I think in another few weeks, India will have its own standard operating procedure, which would be uniform across the country, and there is a consistency and continuity in practice.
Thank you. So you can respond to the question on Deepika's
Yeah.
side.
So the question on victim liability, right? RBI has framed regulations on this. Which is what it basically says is, if the bank is at fault, the bank has to compensate the victim, irrespective of when it is brought to the notice of the bank, right? There is no limitation from a time perspective. If the bank is at fault, the bank has to compensate the victim. If a third party is at fault, neither the bank nor the victim, but the fault is due to some other third party, then the bank has to compensate the victim, provided the victim has brought this to the notice of the bank within 3 days. And if the victim is at fault, then the bank has no obligation to compensate the victim, right? I think it's fair, a fair regulation in the sense that we cannot expect the bank to take up the responsibility of compensating the victim, even when the bank is not at fault and it's victim who has ended up getting, who has been part of the act in getting frauded, right?
So that is, I think we'll stop here. Okay. Very quickly summarizing, the laws are fragmented. There is a need of self-regulation. There are requirements of sectoral bodies who can enforce the regulations. So that is, I think, is the key takeaway from this session. Thank you so much, all of you. Individually, you have got so many things to say. It can't be covered in an hour, but this is the maximum which we can take out from you. Thank you so much for being here today. Please be here for just a token of appreciation from our side. No.